I think the World Health Organization and the WEF clearly telegraphed to the world the week prior to their meeting, their annual meeting, January 15th through 19th in Davos, that they were planning to have a pandemic planning session on January 17th, focusing on, and I'll quote some of the publicity that came out prior to the meeting, when they said, this new hypothetical and unknown disease that has 20 times the death rate of coronavirus, will be planning countermeasures and treatment for this hypothetical unknown disease. And so that's what they came out with prior to the annual meeting. And I would just ask your listeners to think about the enormity of the arrogance and hubris in that statement, and the fact that they think we, the public, are incredibly stupid if they are announcing ahead of time that this disease is hypothetical and unknown. But by the way, it's going to cost 20 times the death rate. And by the way, we're going to already start making another vaccine for it and countermeasures. So if you don't know what the disease is, and if it's hypothetical, how in the world any common sense person knows you can't very well plan countermeasures and treatment and project a death rate? So to me, that goes to the absolute diabolical mindset of these pathological, malignant narcissists in their arrogance and hubris, that they can blatantly brag about causing death, and they can blatantly deceive the public, and they think we won't understand that this is exactly the playbook they used for the COVID pandemic in January 2020. Yeah. What people need to understand is that we already know from the COVID pandemic that the 5G EMF radiation ramp up in 2019, beginning in Wuhan, China. On October 31st, 2019, Wuhan, the Chinese government, turned on the 5G transmitters that had been installed. And people started getting sick acutely.
Yes.
This is from the fall of 2021. It is a medical review article, and it's the Journal of Clinical Translational Research 2021. And what they did was analyze the epidemiological data on the 5G rollouts and the areas of high COVID illness and death. They then analyzed other countries and found a statistically significant correlation between the intensity of the radio frequency radiation and the mortality from SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 illness. That was in 31 countries around the world. So statistically and epidemiologically, the COVID-19 attributed cases and deaths were statistically higher in states and major cities with large 5G infrastructure rollout compared to cities and states that did not yet have that. I think that is very compelling statistical evidence to support what we've known since in the 1960s and 70s from Soviet research and the US government military research on electromagnetic radiation and the biological effects. And let me summarize for your listeners the 6 classes of damage from electromagnetic radiation. Please. First of all, there are changes in the blood cells that can lead to both bleeding and abnormal clotting. Second class of damage is oxidative stress. Well, what does oxidative stress lead to? We saw that in COVID illness. People were short of breath. They were oxygen deprived. There is immune system disruption and activation. Well, where have we heard that? COVID illness, long COVID, COVID vaccine injury, hemorrhagic fevers do the same thing. And then there are disruptions to the intracellular ion flow, calcium ions, sodium and potassium ions, magnesium, and all of these ions, these electrolytes that people take for granted, they are necessary for cells in our body to work properly, nerves and muscles and cardiac, heart. So it's not surprising that electromagnetic radiation can cause neurologic impairment, memory loss, heart arrhythmias, just like COVID did. The fifth class is cardiac effects, and the sixth class is endocrine disruption. You put all of that together, and it creates the catastrophic damage in the human body that we saw with COVID. And the people who were the most at risk were those with comorbidities, obesity, diabetes, lung disease, autoimmune disorders, and elderly people. The same is true for EMF radiation. And the same is true for the hemorrhagic fevers. The good news is that we have treatments available with existing prescription medicines and a host of nutraceuticals and vitamins and minerals that combine to mitigate all of these classes of damage